with Hong Kong Public Doctors Association. Tonight we have two sessions. The first session will be conducted by MPS Medical Director, Dr. Rob Hendry, on alleged negligence during pandemic, supporting public doctors, followed by another section by MPS Business Development Director, Mr. Kim Lee. Kim will explain the benefits of medical protection membership to Hong Kong public doctors. You are always welcome to post your questions during the forum, and we will address collectively after the presentation. It is also our honor to have Dr. Arizona Ma, President of Hong Kong Public Doctors Association, to address an opening speech. Over to you, Dr. Ma.
Hello, fellow speaker and members and doctors. Nice to meet you virtually. It is our pleasure, and we really appreciate the Medical Protection Society organized this talk, this webinar. So during this more than a year's pandemic, our practice has changed a lot, same as the atmosphere of healthcare system all around the world. We start, maybe some of you like me have started the telemedicine things, which is quite new to us. And also nowadays, sometimes our patient will not return to the clinic for follow-up. They will just repeat the prescription for them. And also the latest, hottest issue is the vaccination issue. All those new topics, new practice, and new atmosphere has challenged our practice, and also may also get us some new risk or danger for our daily practice. I hope that the expert panelists will give us some insights about how we handle all the new professional challenge in this pandemic. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and good evening. My name is Dr. Rob Hendry. I'm the Medical Director here at MPS, and it's a real pleasure to join you this evening. And I shall just see if I can get my slides to work. And here we are. What I'd like to talk to you about this evening is about the question of accountability and protection and support for you as professionals, particularly at this difficult time during the pandemic. As Dr. Ma says, a lot of our practices have changed over this time, and it's likely that some of the problems we're seeing may come back and require explanations and accountability. Now, we at MPS work around the world in a number, and these are the main countries and the main jurisdictions we work in. And I've spent a lot of time during this pandemic talking to doctors in these various countries and gathering their experiences of the sorts of problems they've been facing. It's early days yet to know how that's going to play out, and initially, there was a lot of support for the profession during the pandemic, but as patients have perhaps suffered if they've not had the care or the attention they would normally seek and be able to get, some of their frustrations have come through in complaints and so forth. So what I'd like to do this evening briefly is to have a look at the ways in which doctors can be accountable and the ways in which we at MPS can support you. And I quite like this quote: being professionals, and this is, of course, what you have become when you've worked long and hard to become professionals, and you're dedicated to the work you do, but there will be many times where you're tired, frustrated, have other things in your mind. And of course, as professionals, you need to always be able to put your best foot forward, even when you don't feel like it. And there's nothing worse than having a patient or their relatives telling you that they don't believe you've done the best for their loved one. So what I'd like to look at is what the kind of professional threats you face in Hong Kong as public doctors, particularly in the light of the pandemic. We'll think about what the state will and won't cover, I'd like to also share with you some tips for reducing problems, because we're very keen to avoid errors and avoid problems arising in the first place. And my colleague, Mr. Lee, will go on to talk a little bit about how medical protection membership can help protect you and your career, and how you go about seeking our assistance. Now, when it comes to things not working out, if perhaps a patient believes they've suffered, or loved ones say that a member of their family hasn't been properly cared for, a single incident like this can give rise to a number of ways of holding the doctors to account. The most likely one would be a complaint, either verbally, or they write to you or your hospital to say they're not happy with what you've done. They might sue you or the hospital for negligence. Equally, they might report you to the medical council to say that your fitness to be a doctor is questionable and that you should be sanctioned in some ways. If the patient has died, of course, there may be a coroner's inquest into the death where your actions or decisions can be looked at. In addition, your employer in the hospital may decide to take disciplinary action against you if they feel the care or the decisions you've made are questionable. And rarely, but more seriously, there can be allegations of criminal activity made against doctors. And we certainly spend time working with those who have been accused of criminal activities. And I'll say a little bit about that, because although rare, they are extremely stressful and distressing. So looking at the average doctor's career, then this is what we help doctors with around the world. In the average career, and I realize it varies from country to country, but the average doctor might be sued for negligence for a civil claim maybe twice. But there'll be 9 other times they approach us for help. And actually the work that myself and the medical team, both in Hong Kong and around the world, working with members, about 80% of the time we're looking at non-claims issues for members. And perhaps the biggest risk, or the one that most doctors in Hong Kong worry most about, is being referred to the Medical Council. Because, of course, it is the Medical Council that grants you your license to practice. Your ability to be a doctor is by being on their register. And should that be interfered with, either by a suspension or an erasure, then your ability to work as a doctor is taken away. And that has catastrophic effects on individuals. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Medical Council reacts to concerns that are raised by patients or their families during the pandemic. We hope that they'll take into account the unusual circumstances in which people have been working, and the fact that you may not have been able to conduct your consultations or your management of patients in the usual way. However, it may be some months or indeed even years before these complaints are made. And it's going to be the job of those representing you and putting your case forward to remind them of these extraordinary times we've lived in. And I thought it was just interesting to look at some of the data that the Medical Council publish for the cases they see. Now, obviously, this is data that came out prior to the current pandemic. This was their returns for 2019. But in that time, they considered nearly 250 cases of doctors just working within Hong Kong. Now, as we see, many of those are dismissed without being referred to a full panel hearing. But in making sure that they are dismissed, it's often important to have a good letter going in from a lawyer or from NPS to make sure that your case is stated as clearly as possible, and it persuades the panel that there is no case to take further forward. And these are the outcomes that happened to the cases that did go to panel. And as you'll see, quite a significant number of doctors ended up with interference to their ability to work as a doctor. And that's pretty awful and is a real black mark on one's career, particularly for people like yourself who may be looking to continue with your career, both in the public sector or perhaps once you're at consultant level, moving out into a private practice. So this is a very real issue that you need someone strongly arguing your case. What will we see post the pandemic? Will there be more complaints about disregard of professional responsibilities towards patients? We know already anecdotally from speaking to some doctors that patients have complained about not being able to be seen in the usual way, or complained that they weren't treated as they wished they would at this difficult time. I mentioned the risk of criminal proceedings, and as I'm sure some of you will have seen, there's been some cases recently in Hong Kong with doctors being prosecuted for manslaughter, and indeed one doctor recently convicted of that offence. In reality, we probably have more to do with doctors who are accused of inappropriate examinations, allegations that when one's carrying out an examination that there was perhaps touching of a sensitive area and that these were sexually motivated. Patients don't understand, because they haven't had the clinical training we have, about what is normal when perhaps checking for lymph nodes in a patient's groin or axilla or things like that. And certainly, I think with the amount of concern about the #MeToo movement, there's often interpretation by some anxious patients that they may have been inappropriately examined by doctors, complain to the police. And of course, that not only is extremely stressful for the doctor, it's often extremely embarrassing to have allegations of such misconduct being placed. These are complicated cases, and you really do need a proper defence team, both with doctors, but also with clinicians who understand how clinical examinations can be conducted, to persuade the police and the prosecuting authorities that no inappropriate behaviour has taken place. But this sort of defence, this sort of first-class defence, comes at a considerable cost, and would certainly usually be in excess of $1 million Hong Kong dollars should the matter go to court. So it's really important that we're there to protect your profession then. So if I can mention, why do complaints occur, and to think about that in the context of the current pandemic. Clearly things will go wrong from time to time. It's the nature of humanity that we make mistakes. And when patients die or sad things happen, families will often, as part of the grief process, go through a period of anger and denial. And if they don't really understand what has been done or why the outcome has happened in the way it has, that can often be reflected in complaints and claims against members. Equally, if they've got unrealistic expectations about what can be achieved by medicine, and I think nowadays people feel if they go into hospital, everything will be all right, that they express this by way of a complaint. And clearly, where the doctor fails to appreciate a patient's particular needs or wishes, that mismatch of expectations can lead to problems, particularly if things don't work out as you would hope. So what are patients wanting? There's been a lot of surveys done about what patients want, and it's probably worthwhile thinking about this, particularly in the context of the COVID crisis. I put in there clean at number one. Patients are very anxious about attending healthcare facilities, that they may catch the infection. They want to know that your hospital or your clinic is adequately hygienically cleaned, and that the protection equipment both you and they have access to works. They expect doctors to be competent and to be able to carry out their care properly. They want you to communicate with them and to have a consent process that involves them and that they understand what's going on. They expect you to keep confidential secrets that they share with you, and they expect you to behave and conduct yourself as a professional would. Patients have got very high standards of expectations about doctors' behaviours, both in the hospital setting and in their private lives, and that can sometimes lead to concerns and pressures. So what to do if things go wrong? And as I've said, things will sadly from time to go wrong. It's important that you recognize something has gone wrong and report it. Clearly, if you can rectify the situation and prevent further harm to the patient, do so as a priority. But speak to the patient, speak to the family if appropriate, because often we see that complaints and reports to medical counsel or to your employer are driven by a belief that there's been a cover-up, that you've been less than fully honest, and that the doctors are supporting each other in a conspiracy against them. Call a friend. We at MPS employ doctors and lawyers to support you. And we're always keen that where something's gone wrong or you're anxious that you may be subject of a complaint or a report to the medical counsel, we really want to get involved early to be able to give you a bit of support and advice for how to take things forward. It does no harm to apologize if you made a genuine mistake, and often that's all the patient may be looking for. And it's important to learn what concerns they have, because the patient may misunderstand what's been happening, and obviously to learn from the error. So what can you do to reduce the likelihood of medical legal problems, particularly during the current pandemic? Well, firstly, I think it's important to conduct yourself professionally. As we said at the start, you will often feel tired, you'll be exhausted, you've been wearing PPE all day, and you're hot, and you're irritable, you may be hungry. But if you behave, even in these circumstances, unprofessionally by shouting at patients or colleagues or being rude, it will often lead to problems. So taking some time to be self-aware, to take time out and to explain to colleagues and those around you how you're feeling and the problems you're having is important. Because by avoiding and missing meals and so forth, often one can end up in a difficult position. It's also worthwhile just checking the systems, how they've been affected by the pandemic for prescribing, how are you working with hospital pharmacy and so forth? Has that changed because of access to patients in the ward? The way data and information is shared may change, and making sure that the investigations that you wish to have taken place on patients get carried out. Are those going to be affected by perhaps radiology departments changing their rules about how you have access in these situations? And again, making sure your clinical skills are kept up to date, and that if you are undertaking procedures or being asked to undertake procedures, have you done enough of them to actually have the skill? And if you don't, or if you're being asked to do something that you don't believe you're competent to do, even in these emergency circumstances, speak to your colleagues, speak to your superiors about it. And throughout this, it's important to manage patients' expectations. If you aren't going to be able to treat them or follow them up in the usual way because of the pandemic, then it's important to advise them and to make a note of this. So before passing over to my colleague, what are my conclusions? It may seem lighthearted to say it, but the reality from all of the research that's been done is that if patients like you, they're unlikely to sue you. And I think during the pandemic, when you're wearing protective equipment and you're not having the normal interactions with patients as you would, it's important to make an effort to make a connection with them, to have them be sympathetic to your position. Be aware that errors are part of medical practice, and you can be the best doctor in the world, but you will still make errors from time to time, and you have to have ways of dealing with them. Working with your colleagues and those around you to reduce risks within systems is important. And I would always urge people to focus on patients' expectations, particularly at the moment. If somebody is coming to your hospital, either related to COVID or with other health needs in this time, it's important to work out what their expectations are. Are you going to be able to deliver on them, or do you need to manage them? And please look after yourselves. Make sure you get adequate rest. Make sure you get adequate food and hydration, because when you're tired and hungry and dehydrated, you're going to make more mistakes and you're going to fall out with people. And that only creates problems. Call a friend early. We would always wish to hear from you if you're anxious about a situation or if you feel you need some early advice. And I would urge you strongly to make sure you have professional protection in place. You've worked incredibly hard to get to where you have today, and you're contributing so much to society in Hong Kong. Please don't let yourself get into a situation where either the medical council, the criminal justice system, or others spoils that or interrupts that career. You can go onto our website, and Kim will talk more about this in a minute, but we always want to hear from you. We have numbers there, and we have a application form on the website which allows you to get in touch with us. However, that's all I really wanted to mention at this stage. I think there will be time for some questions later, so it'd be grateful if you type those into the question part of the Zoom website, and hopefully myself and my colleagues will deal with those as time goes on. But I look forward to the rest of the webinar, and I look forward to hopefully meeting some of you when I'm next in Hong Kong, when travel restrictions allow me to do so. Thank you. Kim, can I pass over to you now?
Thank you, Dr. Rob Hendry. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kim Lee. I'm the Business Development Director here in Hong Kong. I do look after Hong Kong as well as Singapore and Malaysia. And I could tell you the cases that we do deal with and the members that we do support is far-fetching, and it is currently occurring with medical legal matters. So I'd like to first start off by explaining what I'll be focusing on. I am an MPS employee. Unfortunately, I'm not equipped to give you any medical legal advice, so I shall refrain from doing so. The best advice you could obtain is from my colleagues, particularly from our email, which is listed here. So if you do need to get some advice from our colleagues, this is the best point of call to actually obtain this advice. Today's session that I'll provide is basically information for your consideration only. So we're hoping to educate the doctors in Hong Kong, particularly in the hospital authority, so that you have an informed decision and you're able to consider if you're in the right grades. So allow me to begin.
In today's ever-changing world, as healthcare professionals, you're under more pressure than ever before. You need to be there for your patients, so know that we'll be there for you, as a genuine partner in your career. We truly believe that prevention is better than cure, so we aim to be much more than a last line of defense. At the beginning of your career, passing exams is the most important thing in your life. So with revision guides, discounts on textbooks, practice exam questions and more, support starts now. With members in countries around the world, wherever your career takes you at elective time or following graduation, you can rely on hassle-free support and expert local knowledge. As a doctor, dentist, GP or general surgeon, whatever your path, MPS is with you at every step. Benefit from risk management workshops, online learning and publications, all designed to help you prevent the worst from happening. And if you need advice, our team of medico and dento-legal advisors are only a phone call away. With these resources, our 120 years experience is yours. But even the most experienced clinicians can find themselves on the receiving end of a complaint or claim. And when that happens, our expert team is here with world-class defense and more. We can handle the media, offer counseling services, and provide support to get you back to your best as quickly as possible. Advice, support, education, protection. That's why 97% of our members would recommend MPS.
I wanted to present this video clip because it actually captured the very essence of what MPS and medical protection offers to members. Just to highlight, we are a member mutual organization. And by saying that, what that means is we are not an insurance company, which is very, very different, because insurance companies that predominantly are listed are taking profits from their shareholders. And when they take profits from their shareholders, they also need to provide dividends. MPS is a not-for-profit organization, and we actually focus on protecting members. So it is a doctor-for-doctor organization. So when we provide protection, we are providing pre-protection defense for you. Another focus is this aspect of discretion. Often people tell us that they're not sure about what discretion is, but what I can confirm with you is that we actually provide positive discretion. Positive discretion where, for example, when normally we would not provide that protection, we would do so on the basis of the claim and the situation that you've presented, as long as it is within a clinical context. We also have this management of cases focus, where we have an expert team of in-house medical legal expertise, providing with the information that Dr. Hendry had mentioned earlier. So my session will be talking about specific understanding of the state or the HKHA indemnity here in Hong Kong, the MPS and how we work with state employed practitioners like yourself, government-backed indemnity and how this works with the MCHK regulations, limitations to government-backed indemnity, often this is important to understand, and the potential medical legal dilemmas for HKHA doctors. So as Dr. Hendry had mentioned earlier, medical legal matters that MPS deals with in supporting doctors are usually related to anything that is ethical or regulatory concerns that arise from practice of medicine. So if you have any ethical or legal regulation issues and you're unsure of, you can actually contact us for advice on these medical legal matters. Regulatory matters often refer to the MCHK. And as Dr. Hendry had mentioned, we are aware of these increasing risks on medical legal matters in Hong Kong. These have arisen over a period of time, and the number of medical legal matters reported within not just the state, the HKHA healthcare system, but also the private sector as well. You may have read about this in the media, in the news, and in your professional channels. This is because patients are becoming more aware of their rights. Patients also bring with them higher expectations about the patient care that they're receiving. Another reason for this increase is the plaintiffs are targeting medical legal arenas, as they could see the sector becoming more and more lucrative. Whether this is the reason, there is more and more litigation that Hong Kongers are facing. We also know that medical legal matters are becoming more and increasingly costly. So when you think about how much you're paying for your indemnity cost, think also about how much that amount is actually contributing to your defense. The financial cost of managing, defending, settling, and sometimes investigating is becoming increasingly expensive. It's not just the cost of defending. There are also, when it comes to claims, which include damages, these are increasingly becoming larger. With MPS, the HKHA grades that we offer are non-claims indemnity. So this is not one of the factors to consider. Importantly, there is this mental aspect or psychological aspect and the physical impact it has on doctors facing these allegations. During this time, you could reassure that it is very stressful and the pressures do impact family members as well as medical legal matters that can last for years and years. So when it comes to litigation, this is basically what it is in a nutshell. There's the criminal allegation, which includes illegal allegations or sexual harassment on patients is one of those examples, or a civil allegation, which is via litigation, could be a breach of contract or a negligence. The little red book, which I think is quite infamous here in Hong Kong, is the Code of Professional Conduct, a guidance by the MCHK. It is not a mandatory requirement for a doctor to access this indemnity or insurance, but it is your personal ability to pay the potential compensation awards or legal costs in defending any claims or complaints against you. So this is why it's important that you have an appropriate amount of protection or coverage that is necessary. So I'm sure most doctors are aware what had happened. So back in 2018, in December 1st, the hospital authority decided to extend out disciplinary protection insurance by allowing doctors under their employment to have this clinical and non-clinical professional cover for ex-staff and honorary staff. So they were able to backdate any work or any incidences that may have occurred after the 1st of December, 1991. At that time, MPS was still providing protection to HA doctors. So what we did was we extended, in addition to the HKHA disciplinary protection insurance, our additional cover. This is something to keep in mind. The purpose of government-backed indemnity is to ensure public patients are compensated if they suffer harm. It's not as much to protect you or your professional interest. This is generally when I talk about state indemnity. They will not provide or may have limits for legal representation at an inquest where the primary focus of defense is the doctor. They may not provide immediate assistance with responding to a patient complaint. It may be delayed a little bit later when the issue becomes too serious or you are actually facing the medical counsel. It does not necessarily purport all the support that you need if you're being charged with a criminal act, such as manslaughter or assault, as mentioned earlier. What they most definitely would not focus on is your individual media relations support or in preparing statements or acting as a spokesperson for you if you have these incidents arise. They may or may not provide assistance with legal and ethical dilemmas, but they definitely are unlikely to guide you in relation to writing medical legal reports. In general, you'll be required to do that on your own. But more importantly, some do not provide the Good Samaritans Act. So this is something you need to consider. So this is an article I found that was published within the Medical Council's 2018 documentation. And I wanted to highlight this because this is a Q&A that was circulated, and I think this is still quite relevant. A patient complaint does not necessarily go to the disciplinary inquiry straight away. It first goes through the Preliminary Investigation Committee, the PIC, and only after deliberation at the PIC will a case be referred to the disciplinary inquiry. So right now, it seems still quite unclear as to whether or not the HK provided insurance covers costs incurred during the PIC period, during the PIC phase. And keep in mind, legal advice is required as early as the initial PIC phase. So this is where MPS could come in. When it comes to definitions, for example, the coroner's court is not the official body that is specified in the HA provided insurance. The official body is the Medical Council of Hong Kong. So question then was asked, will the coroner's inquest be covered? And again, this is still quite relevant. Another area which assistance is lacking with the HA provided insurance is the legal advice and representation for criminal proceedings, such as indecent assault, which may arise in the course of clinical duty. Historically, HA pays for the damages arising from malpractices of their employees. This is what you call claims. This is the vicarious liability. However, when it comes to yourself, your reputation, will this be enough? When it comes to MPS coverage, because we do offer an occurrence-based protection, whenever a doctor with hospital authority joins MPS with membership, it normally outlasts the doctor's career within the hospital authority. This is because we remain effective when the case is brought up, maybe years down the track, once the doctor has left his or her employment at the hospital authority. Now, if I may, I'll showcase the benefits of the MPS membership for public practice members. So HKHA doctors, if you look at what we provide to our private practice, so private doctors, we provide an occurrence-based membership. Within that, we offer clinical negligence claims arising from professional practice. The only difference between what we offer the HKHA membership is we do not offer the claims protection because this is covered by your employer. So there's no point having that dual indemnity because your employer has indemnified this component. What we provide is the assistance in responding to patient complaints, representation, as we've mentioned earlier, with counsel proceedings, inquest and inquiries. We also provide assistance in preparing and compiling of reports, emergency medical legal advice that's available 24/7, Protection for Good Samaritans Act, an abundance of free risk management workshop that you could go online and on demand at the call of your requirements, and help with any unwanted attention. But more importantly, a lot of facts, information, and journals that you could read, particularly looking at case scenarios where you could avoid having any issues in the first place. So keep in mind, as a member, if you do join MPS with the HKHA membership, the government actually provides your claims arising from your professional practice. But more so, you would need additional representation for medical counsel proceedings and so on. What we did back in 2018 was we provided a choice for doctors to choose whether they wanted the standard non-regulatory protection, which is excluding regulatory assistant, which covers basically everything we've mentioned earlier with the membership benefits, but there are exclusions. So the first exclusions is the claims indemnity. Again, because the employer has provided this, there is no point in having this double up. Doctors then have a choice to choose between a regulatory cover or a non-regulatory cover. This choice was feedback which we received back in the day when doctors then said, actually, I would like something that tops up, but not actually adds on to it. So we do have an excluding regulatory subscription rates, which are slightly lower, but only slightly lower because we do provide this as a general offer to members. So this may look complicated, but this is the grade sheet that we publish through the HKMA. Depending on your scope of work, we would then suggest that doctors really consider which protection that they need. Ideally, if it includes regulatory, it will include those that are either a HGA, HGM, HKS, or HKC. This is predominantly for the hospital authority doctors that are medical officers, senior medical officers, consultants, as well as those who work in academia. Having this additional regulatory assistance provides you that additional safeguard. This is also quite important because not saying that there will be this situation, but it's also about protecting yourself. If there are situations where there are conflicts of interest, where there's a situation that you're disputing with your employer in solving a situation, then you may need this additional regulatory support. If you feel quite safe and you feel that actually I would like to have the support without regulatory assistance, it is only marginally cheaper. And we also have a Department of Health cover, which is for general government membership. So I would urge doctors to consider which cover is right for them and which one would be best protecting them moving forward into the future. Just to recap about what we offer MPS and what we offer for state employed practitioners. We offer advice, reporting, but more importantly, the complaint, if it is clinical. For example, if you are outside and you have a car accident and this car accident obviously requires some legal support, this is not within scope because it's not a clinical matter. However, if the accident then is presented to the medical counsel, this is where we use discretion to actually include that as part of the defense that you may require. Also, when it comes to disciplinary support, it needs to be clinical in nature as well. I've highlighted the regulatory MCHK aspects because this is very important if you've chosen the regulatory support grade that we offer. And as such, we also offer media issues, Good Samaritan Act. And more importantly, when it comes to the civil claim, keep in mind, this is against the state, and it is up to the state's attorney to investigate.
And here's the first of 2 slides. It may be.
It's up to the attorneys to investigate whether they defend the matter or not. As I mentioned earlier, we offer an occurrence-based indemnity. What does the occurrence-based indemnity mean? That the protection that you have is for now and for the future. Protection is complete after membership has ended, even if the adverse incident has not been notified. So you do not need to report a suspected incident or if the incident has not even occurred. What we normally see is an average incident or a settlement gap tends to be 4 to 5 years. So if I could recap, if your membership started in 2008 and the incident occurred somewhere between 2008 and 2009, however, you had retired in 2011. Let's just say in 2012, post-retirement, a claim is made. Because we offer occurrence-based membership, you will still be protected and it would not affect your current financial status, nor will it affect your estate moving on into the future. We do offer risk prevention, and this is an online learning platform that we offer, which you need to register and put in your secret password so that you could go back to this portal whenever you need to. Within this portal, there's a compendium of documentation. So once you've completed a course, you receive a certificate and it's recorded within this portal. We offer tele-webinars. We have a lot of publications within PRISM, as well as workshops and masterclasses that we encourage doctors to attend. So here's a showcase of how we support you locally. We have a local medical legal consultant, Dr. Justin Cheng. We have a business development manager, who's Ms. Serdi Wong, who's been instrumental in organizing today's event, and myself, who is here if ever you need any questions or inquiries. In addition to that, we do have the administration support that we have outsourced to the HKMA. So you do have an abundance of contacts in addition to our UK colleagues that if you may wish to contact them direct. As outlined earlier, this is if you do need any medical legal advice or you need to request for assistance, this is where you contact us. So by going to medicalprotection.org, you will automatically reach our Hong Kong page. Within Contact Us, you could actually get medical legal advice by contacting the advisor directly or emailing querydoc@medicalprotection.org or a toll-free number. So this is a free of charge from Hong Kong, and you'll be dialing into the UK directly. If you do require assistance, this is the form that you will need to fill out. So the request for assistance form, or the RFA, is quite simple. All doctors need to do is provide their membership number, their title, their first names, their surname, medical council registration, and then within there, a quick click button that tells us what you're looking for. Are you looking for a claim, a criminal investigation, or if you're looking for ethical or dilemma, a legal dilemma that you require some support? Within there, we do need you to identify when this period of involvement or interaction commenced from and when you believe that this incident had occurred, and then the dates in which you believe so. At the time of the incident, what was your specialty? What was your location? So which hospital or clinic were you working at? And at the time of this incident, what was your grade or position? Then a brief anonymized, so keep in mind, it needs to be anonymized summary of what the incident is. The patient's initials, patient's date of birth, and the outcome. And if there was an unfortunate death, then please advise the dates for that. So that's it for myself. We'll open up to question. If I could get participants to screenshot this, and we do want your survey feedback, because this is how we can improve our presentations moving on in the future. As an incentive for your feedback, we are giving away coffee vouchers, which we'll be sending through to you once this presentation has ended. So I now open up to any questions, and I would like to invite Dr. Hendry and Dr. Ma, if you would like, you feel free to join us as well, and my colleague, Dr. Cheng as well, who's our medical legal consultant.
Thanks, Kim. And I was just going to, just as Justin comes in, I was just going to ask Justin if he's been seeing or been speaking to colleagues in clinical practice in Hong Kong, what they're seeing happening with the pandemic and the feedback from patients.
Yeah, some of the previous questions that we have received for this seminar, including some of the regulatory issues that may involve outside of the workplace. Could you, for example, driving or other issues that may not involve their workplace and may trigger the medical council investigation? What are some of the possibilities?
Yes, you're quite right, Justin. And I think doctors are sometimes surprised that the regulator, the medical council, will take an interest in their conduct generally, and that would include, criminal convictions for things like driving. I think the data that we showed that. Other things, sometimes we've seen problems with doctors, particularly younger doctors, maybe using recreational drugs, so forth, and various other things. Yeah, the medical council do take an interest in people's professional conduct. I think the argument they would make is that it may bring the profession into disrepute, or it may diminish the public's confidence in the profession if doctors act in what they deem to be an unprofessional way. So it's certainly something we have an interest in. We try to alert both the doctors and increasingly medical students, I suppose, to these risks, because unlike a lot of professions, being a doctor seems to be a 24 hours a day commitment, doesn't it?
We also have a couple of questions online as well. So one of the participants asked, it is believed that HKA has been providing regulatory support to its employees since 2018. Yeah, perhaps Kim can touch on that in terms of the regulatory support from HKA.
That's correct, Dr. Cheng. The HKHA has provided regulatory support. However, when it comes to when they intervene and when the attorneys start to engage on these issues, what we've seen is it tends to be a little bit later. So what MPS offers is early adoption, early intervention to make this issue go away as soon as possible before it actually goes any further. So when it comes to the difference between the regulatory support that MPS offers and what the HKHA professional disciplinary insurance offers, it is about early intervention. It is about providing early support and advisory when doctors need it. And in some cases, there are limitations on how much support is provided. So, when it comes to how it's indemnified when you're protected within the medical council, I think the comprehensiveness of MPS actually proves that there is more that we offer.
What happens if there's conflict of interest within the clinical team? Does the member need an independent representation?
I think that's a really good point, Justin, that I think one of the things that MPS, we would pride ourselves in is that because we're an independent mutual, our only reason to exist is to look after the interests of the individual doctors. And that if one is in a position where, as a doctor, you are conflicted with either with colleagues or with the hospital, you know, if you feel you're being unfairly blamed for something, perhaps a breakdown in the systems within a hospital or the way in which you've been asked to act, you can see that you could easily find yourself in a position where you're arguing against the position adopted by somebody else. And I think in that sort of situation, it's really important that you have independent legal and advice services that are 100% focused on supporting you and your interests. And that's why I think a lot of people feel more comfortable if they have protection in their own right that is acting only for them and not balancing those interests with the interests of others or institutions.
Yeah. Could I ask if Dr. Ma would be available to some comments about the process of activating the regulatory medical counsel support within HA? We heard that HA doctors need to notify their team head, the department head, HR, in order to activate their support for medical counsel issues. Is that correct?
It depends on what sort of legal support you are asking for. For example, if you just want to ask legal support from the HA provided new legal program, the HA has already listed out the has an information sheet. You can directly call that law firm. So you don't need to inform your seniors or seek for that legal support. But however, if you want to seek for the legal support that the lawyer that working for HA, because there is a group of lawyer, a bunch of lawyer actually working in the HA headquarters. It is still approachable, but if you want to look for those lawyers, you do need to talk to your seniors and so, because when you approach those lawyers, it will be definitely the headquarters or your senior will know about it. But for the new legal service, you don't need to inform your doctors, inform your seniors. However, recently, I've also tried to approach that legal service, the new HA legal plan that for all sorts of colleagues since 2018. One of the lawyer working for that plan told me that actually, if you are also an MPS member, it is better you also provide them your MPS number, because they found that sometimes not all cases are covered by that program. Their previous experience is that some HA doctors has approached them under the frame of that plan. However, later HA told them, "Oh, this is not covered." So they need to ask the MPS number and start everything again. So actually, I have no chance to inquire with the HA Human Resources team yet, but definitely we need further clarification. Since the program has already run for 2 years, we haven't heard, we haven't got a full analysis from the Human Resources headquarter Human Resources department yet. They have just give up some statistic about the utilization and so on. But whether they have go deep into analysis, whether it helps our colleague or not, I haven't heard of it. But we will inquire with them.
Yep, definitely there needs to be some clarity in terms of what is excluded in the legal support, right, from the HKHA legal team. Yeah. Okay, yep.
May I ask for one more question? And also, I know that there's some question in the Q&A session. I know that yes, if you look, you have one of the slides showing the statistic about those MCHK cases and so on. Actually, you see quite many cases has been dismissed because some of those cases nowadays doctors got more different kinds of complaints. Sometimes you got complaint not related to the clinical issues. Sometimes it's related to your behavior on the social media or so on. So may I ask Rob or Dr. Zhang or Kim, can MPS also share their experience? Have they ever helped their members handle this kind of complaint to the regulatory bodies? What sort of precaution we should take for our daily life in order to avoid those kind of complaints and so on?
You're very happy to talk to that one. And you're absolutely right. We're seeing this as a global phenomenon. I think as social media takes off, I think it picks up on what I was saying about the fact that the Medical Council, not just in Hong Kong, but in many countries, will take an interest in what doctors say publicly. And they would regard social media and any comments being made on social media as in the public domain. We have tried to argue that what's said in private shouldn't be of concern to them, but the way the law seems to be going is that they do take an interest in in private conversations. And we've seen a number of doctors, particularly some younger doctors, subject to disciplinary or regulatory processes because of comments they've made, perhaps breaching patients' confidence, but perhaps criticizing colleagues or criticizing hospital departments that they work in, commenting about the standards or things there. So I think, and indeed it's probably something, it could be a very interesting subject of a session with yourself and your colleagues about the use of social media and the risk of it. But we know we definitely do see this as something that's a new risk that doctors are facing because of the rise and prevalence. And I think a lot of doctors don't think that when they're chatting in a social media forum that they're necessarily on duty, if you like. But no, the regulators will take an interest in that. I know, Justin, I think you've probably had a few inquiries from doctors about that, haven't you?
Yeah, not just in Hong Kong as well, in Singapore and Malaysia, expressing an opinion, medical opinion within the social media, receiving interviews that allegedly practice promotion, improper allegations against sexual harassment. Actually, many different types of allegations that outside of a doctor's workplace, and that a doctor do needs additional support. And Kim?
No, I've got nothing to add. I think my two learned colleagues have covered everything when it comes to social media issues. And I think it is quite prominent right now in Hong Kong that there are a lot of opinions that may be different to others, and then that actually triggers some uncertainty. So it's more important that you do have this protection now more than ever before.
Yep. There are just a couple of questions posted online by other participants, in particular the community vaccine centers. And could MPS clarify on the issues of whether MPS indemnify the clinical negligence arise from those doctors in private health organizations that operate the community vaccine centers? Rob, do you want to mention some of the principles in.
I was just going to
And,
ask, yeah, because I think we have made quite a clear statement. I don't know if it's on the website, is it, Kim, about the position that if there's any uncertainty, people might be directed to?
So for private practitioners supporting this initiative, particularly this as CBCs, we have extended the protection for a claims, if something were to arise. With the Hong Kong situation, the Hong Kong government is indemnifying for the product, for the vaccine. So in many parts of the world, I think the biggest risk is the vaccination indemnity, which Hong Kong government has confirmed that they are indemnifying, and have set aside an amount to protect scenario of that happening. With regards to public doctors, so hospital authority or government doctors, we are offering the non-claims components, so the advisory and so forth, as per usual. So if doctors are actually doing work with the vaccination centers and do need advice, we're available to support doctors on that. But similarly to our standard membership grades, we do not provide a claims cover because that's provided by the state on that regard.
Yeah.
So we have extended to private consultants who are supporting the CBCs.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's a question regarding grades, following on to a question. What happened if the member bought the wrong grade?
Okay, I'm happy to take this one. It is very important that members check their grades to make sure that they are properly indemnified. With regards to the grading system, if, for example, during your placement within the hospital authority, you have had promotions. You've moved up the ladder from, let's just say, from an intern position to medical officer to the senior medical officer, and you're doing different types of work within your scope of work. It is important that you do advise us yearly that you have moved up the chain of command, because the risk and the work that you do would differ. So we are pricing based on the risk. We are pricing so that we do cover the situation within your work. So we do urge that you go into the correct grades and you advise MPS through the HKMA on a yearly basis when you renew. So what are the consequences of going into the wrong grade or not advising of any grade changes? It would be quite unfortunate because on some situations we have to not protect on that one incident. So essentially, if you then correct your gradings, we could then engage in future incidences that you need support. I think this is more important when it comes to the difference between regulatory and non-regulatory. So if you've purchased non-regulatory support, but do require regulatory, I think this is where it's very difficult to define, because essentially for a little bit more that you have to pay for your membership, getting regulatory assistance makes a world of difference. So I think when it comes to buying the wrong grade, the consequences of it, I think having more is often better than not having enough.
Thank you very much. It seems that we have answered all the questions and we have slightly overrun already. So could I ask Dr. Ma, Rob, and Kim, do you have any closing remarks?
Really just to say it's been a pleasure to spend some time with the group. And perhaps we could do this again if there's particular issues, maybe talking about social media issues or other problems that particularly confront doctors in the public sector. We're very happy to spend time with them.
I might then end on this point. So we do value your feedback so that we can improve upon our next presentations to you. More importantly, we are applying for CME accreditation, and hopefully once it's approved, we'll be able to award you for the CME. So it's important that you do this survey for the CME accreditation as well. If by the end of this presentation, you will receive this notification. If not, could I invite you to scan this QR code with your phones, and you'll be able to complete the survey within a minute or two. But thank you again. Thank you, Dr. Rob Hendry and Dr. Chang for your time, and Dr. Ma, who's
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, good evening. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, sorry, trying to
That's okay.
kick
I
these.
wasn't sure if we were staying on the link, but you never know who's hanging about, do you?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to kick them out.
No more, just two more. Okay, won't be long.
Get back onto the Zoom.
Yeah, how about we go back onto the Zoom?
Yep.
Just
Won't be long.